My name is Ray Yutrenka. I was born and raised in Argyle, Minnesota, and graduated in 1965. From there, I went to Wahpeton Science School and for a year and a quarter, and I decided my two brothers were previously in the Army, Army and Navy. Brother Ted retired from the Navy, and Tom volunteered for the draft. So during that time, Vietnam was really going, so I kind of felt compelled I should follow my brothers, which I did. And it was very interesting. I volunteered for the draft. I through Hazelhurst and Warren, and we ended up taking a bus to Fargo for the induction center there. And it was very interesting. Half the guys on the bus were just scared that they were drafted and that they were going to be going in, and some of them were hoping that they got medical discharges, but whatever, I was looking forward to it. It was a...
Say, Ray, did you know any of these guys?
Pardon me?
Did you know any of these guys on the bus?
Yes, Roger Nowoski and Dale Lawson was some of them, and some of the other guys from Stephen, I don't recall their names, but it was people from Marshall County kind of spread over. It was probably about 15 of us. And so we went to the induction center and did the physicals and everything, and they told us we passed, and then we took our oath in the afternoon there, and we were supposed to take a airplane out, and it was February of '68 and '67, and it was storming so bad that they said, well, we're not going to do anything until tomorrow, but we got to give a phone number, stay in touch with us in case it changes. Well, they called later, and we ended up going to the train depot. They wanted everybody to train, so we took the train to Fort Bliss, Texas. And that was a very enjoyable experience. Got to know a couple of guys from down by, let's see, it was down toward Brainerd, a couple of small towns, and hit it off with them, and the train would stop. It's not like an Amtrak would stop periodically at these smaller towns. So we decided, hey, we're going in the Army, let's get some beer. So we'd run off and get a case of beer. It was wintertime, so we put the beer between the two cars. So we just had a good time going down there. And then when we got to Texas, it was first class on the train. We had berths, and we were the first ones to eat, and we could always had the best things on the menu. And we got to Texas, and they put us on a bus that took us out to the base. And that was a rude awakening, because then people started screaming at us and making us do push-ups in our civilian clothes. And I kept thinking, man, I want to get back on that train. But that was not to be. So went from there, and I had a little bit of college. They wanted me to be a squad leader, which I was, and which I really enjoyed, because some of these people, to beat an old saying, they're right off the farm, and boy, they were afraid, and they were didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to make bunks, and some of them, I don't know if they ever polished their shoes, but they sure learned in a hurry, and that was a great experience. And I really enjoyed basic from the standpoint as my neighbor, Arnie Jabinski, was the captain and the commander of the MPs at Fort Bliss. So he would, after a couple weeks in basic, he would get me out on the weekends. I'd go over to his place on a Saturday and spend the night and come back on Sunday. And it was really enjoyable. It broke that up. And then I got to know a couple of sergeants there. And on Saturday afternoons, I was a squad leader, and another squad leader. He invited us over there a couple of times over to his house and had barbecues and beer and everything. And that made basic a lot more enjoyable. And from there, I was infantry, and I was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington. And when I got there, I ended up being assistant squad leader because they had like a pre-NCO school that the squad leaders had to go through.
Did they fly you there, Ray?
Pardon me?
Did you fly to Fort Lewis
Yeah,
then?
very first airplane ride on American Airlines, the 727, and it was from then on I knew I wanted to fly in airplanes. So it was a very interesting duty, and I was supposed to go to OCS. I already had the clearances and everything that was scheduled to go, and I said, no, I changed my mind. I don't want to go to OCS. I'm going to put in my 21 months, and not at that time, it was a little shorter, and go back to college. I decided I didn't want to make a military career. So they said, okay, we'll give you three choices. You can go back to Fort Bliss and learn how to shoot the Law missile, which would shoot down airplanes. Or else you can go to Fort Knox and learn how to drive a truck. And I said, well, I've run enough farm equipment in my life. I don't necessarily care to run a truck. And they said, well, the other thing is we got an opportunity with your clearances to go to the Old Guard in Washington, D.C. I said, what's that? They said, well, that's a ceremonial division in the Army. And I found out later the Old Guard is the oldest military unit in the military. No, it was the oldest Army unit in the military. It was formed in 1987, and 1787, correct. And so it was with George Washington. So it had a lot of history, and I thought, well, okay, I picked that one. And it was very interesting. After we got there, bear in mind, when you were a infantry, it just wasn't if you were going to Vietnam, it was when. So, we all prepared for that. And because everybody there in the Old Guard was infantry. So, I met a couple of sergeants there, and in an introductory school, it was another 2-week period where they had classes and everything and teaching that. And a couple of sergeants came in one afternoon on break and says, who wants to go play handball? And in the Army, or probably most militaries, they said, whatever you do, don't volunteer. And I said, well, heck with that, I volunteered. So they said, put your civilian clothes on and put your tennis shoes on and shorts on, and we're going down to the YMCA. And there's about 15 other guys. They said, we want to go too. And he said, no, this guy's the only one that's going because he volunteered. And I told him I never played handball before. So they said, we'll teach you. So I went down there and I played my heart out, and that's before they even had gloves, I think, because I was playing barehanded and so were they. And boy, at the end of those sessions, my hand was swollen and red and everything like that. And they said, well, put a little ice on it. So he said, how about tomorrow? You're a pretty good player. I said, okay. So I got to go again the next day. And that was kind of the start of where I was going in the military, because these two sergeants were the sergeants in the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. And Fife and Drum Corps is a part of the Honor Guard company in the whole Army. And they also guarded too many unknown soldiers. And I think we had John Kennedy gravesite guards there. And then we had the U.S. Army drill team, where they throwing rifles with bayonets over their heads and heads of the people that are in the squads there. It's quite a something to see. So after that, the sergeant said on the way back, I distinctly remember, they said, too bad you don't know something about, did you ever play any instruments? I said, no. I said, never played any instruments in high school or anything. I said, it's too bad because we really need fifers, the flute type thing. And I said, well, I didn't play fife, but I know how to read music, or didn't play an instrument. I know how to read music because I took accordion lessons for 3 years, in 5th through 7th grade. And I said, they said, you did? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, that's great. He said, we're going to get you an audition with the commander of the Fife and Drum Corps tomorrow. And I said, well, how do I pretend to fife? I play a fife when haven't even seen one or touched one. And they said, well, get a Coke bottle tonight and start playing on that thing. And if you can get a noise out of that Coke bottle, he says, we can teach you the keys and everything else, the marching. So went from there, and that night, boy, I practiced till my jaw was sore, and I never knew I could make so many noises out of a Coke bottle. But the next day on the audition, the officer in charge said, well, you come highly recommended. Do you know music? So he got a music sheet out, and I started naming the chords and everything like that. He said, okay. He said, here's a fife. See if you can make any noise out of it. Boy, I blew on that thing, and that thing made so much noise it almost scared me. But he said, that's good. He said, we can teach you. And he said, being you come highly recommended from the sergeants, we want to extend an offer for you to join the Fife and Drum Corps. I said, okay, I'd really like to. And I thought, well, I'm still going to be infantry. And then he said, being you're going to be a musician now, we're going to get your MOS changed, which is your job title, from infantry to musician. So that was the start of my career in the Fife and Drum Corps, and really went from there. It was really an honor, and to be associated with the honor guard too, because it was pomp and circumstances, and we were a ceremonial guard for the president, and we also...
I might have missed this, Ray. I might have missed it. Where are you now in the military?
Fort Myer, Virginia, and Arlington.
Okay.
Right next to Arlington Cemetery. And I'm glad you asked that, Pete, because here's a little side story. First Sunday I was there, I went to Mass at the chapel right by the cemetery there, and I was walking back to the barracks from there, and this car pulled up alongside of me and rolled the window down and said, you want to ride? I said, sure. So we got in there, and I said and he asked me, he said, what are you? And I said, well, I just got here. I'm in the Fife and Drum Corps, going to be in the Fife and Drum Corps now after the audition here. And he said, oh, that's good. He said, where are you from? I said, Argyle, Minnesota. I said, oh, Argyle. He said, I was born and raised in Pembina. So he said, I know right where Argyle's at. So I said, what do you do? He said, well, I'm the battalion commander, Colonel Comney. And I said, wow. I said, you are. And it was kind of a quasi-relationship after that. Whenever we see each other, he always asked me how things are in Argyle. And I said, well, about the same, winter's cold and summer's pretty warm, and it's grow great crops. And so it was a good relationship. But the Fife and Drum Corps was a real unique opportunity because with where we were right there, we had to be prepared for inspections. Anytime it was all what we call spit and polish, and so we end up, we always had to be like they call strap troops. So because we always had officers or generals that on spur of the moment that would like to come through and see the honor guard and the tomb guards, and their barracks room was right next to the Fife and Drum Corps. And that was really interesting because these tomb guards, soldier guards, I got to know some of them. And on their days off, when they weren't working the tomb, they would be working, polishing their brass, their boots. They had rifles in there. They had a mat at 63 feet long right in their room that they would be practicing their cadence for walking the tomb. And it was really serious stuff for them, and they took it wholeheartedly. But it was fun going down there on the weekends when there was a lot of people there, hotter than heck in the summertime and humid, where we'd go down. I'd go in the catacombs where they would get dressed and get ready because that was air conditioned. It was really nice, and learned a lot about them. It was interesting. I'll just a couple of quick notes about that because I'm sure some of the people who've seen it have been to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. What they do is they have extra thick soles, like they're almost a thick, 1 inch thick. And for the heat in the summertime and the cold in the wintertime, it protects their feet when they're walking. And then also in the summertime, what they do, they had their dress boots were the same dress boots that we had when we weren't performing as a Fife and Drum Corps. They take the lining out so the clothes can breathe better to keep them cool in the summertime. And it was just so interesting getting to know these people and how they prepare and how everybody with them helps prepare them for walking the tomb. So, but getting back to uniforms, if you ever have an opportunity to look on the internet, it's called the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps, and we had to wear red jackets, coats, and then also white pants and white wigs. We all had to wear white wigs and three-corner hat to resemble colonial times. So it was, we had a unique dress, but when we'd go to the White House in the summertime, it was just hell on standing there, because the Army would make you get there early and you have to stand around and wait, and standing around and waiting with all your other clothes on and these red jackets and these wigs and these black hats. It was hard, but I guess you learned how to do it. And then some of the other opportunities we had, performing opportunities, in the summertime, every Wednesday, it was called Torchlight, and at the Jefferson Memorial on the Tidewater Basin there, we'd perform with our uniforms and everything, and they would have, they would be playing different songs like America the Beautiful, and the band would be playing, and then also they'd have cannon fire during some of these songs, but not ours and everything. And it was, we'd get thousands of people coming to every Wednesday to this. A lot of tourists they'd found out about, and they would come to that. Some of the other things we did is, it was some of the other places we performed at besides the White House, and we performed there for when they had foreign dignitaries, heads of state would come in, and that's when they'd have the Fife and Drum Corps, and we'd have the whole battalion out there in their dress blues and us in our red outfits, and performing, and they would review the troops going by and everything, and there, and then also performed a couple times at West Point for their homecoming, up on the Hudson River up in New York, and we did a lot of Fife and Drum Corps contests up in the Northeast. They're really big because President Kennedy was real big on that, so he promoted them in a few short years that he was in there, because we had started, the Fife and Drum Corps started in 1960. So it had, and I was in 67 and 68, so it was quite new yet. But yet we had being in the honor guard, we had the notoriety of around the country of being performing, and we did performances out in Arizona and Williamsburg, Virginia, Indy 500, Minnesota State Fair. We were on the, it was a daytime show called the Mike Douglas Show. We were on there with Lucille Ball in Philadelphia, at where the Liberty Bell is located. And there are just so many other places that we had. And the reason we were there is, I mean, that's just all we did. I mean, we practiced our music, and every day we'd march, and when we compete against other Fife and Drum Corps, and there's some good ones out there.
So you were on the road quite a bit, Ray.
Yeah, a fair amount. And,
so where would you stay? Would you stay in motels or?
No, normally at Army bases, where we were. There was always a base close by that we would always stay at, bases. And in Minnesota, it was over at Fort Snelling there at some of their headquarters there. And then also at Indy, there was some barracks there. We always stayed there, Keith, and at military installations. And Annapolis, we performed that numerous times, and at the Naval Academy.
So you would fly into these places, and you'd carry all your own equipment, and
yeah, when they were a great distance, like Minnesota and Indianapolis and Arizona. We had military aircraft out of Andrews Air Force Base, and normally what they would do is surprising. They would put us, well, the plane was outside. They would have us disembark the buses, and we would be in the same hangar where they kept Air Force One, Air Force Two, the two 747s. They were not 747s at that time; they were 707s that they had. It's the same ones that are in the Reagan Library now, and we could be standing. They still had guards around them, but we all had clearances and all. So it's, we're all military. So, and then getting back how I got into Fife and Drum Corps, I was going back to Argyle when I was a kid growing up. My dad would always, every Saturday night, it was like going to church Sunday morning. We'd have to watch Lawrence Welk in the Lawrence Welk show on Saturday night. And he just loved that, and he loved the accordion. And so he ended up buying me an accordion, and I started taking lessons, and I wasn't very good at it, but I still kept taking them. And got a little better and everything, and I wanted to play sports, so I took him for 3 years, and I said, Dad, this is enough of that. And he said, well, don't give up on that. He said, because someday those accordion lessons are going to pay off. And boy, they paid off in spades for me when I went to the Fife and Drum Corps.
It taught you how to read music, and so that got you in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. And we just had, it was so interesting there. And we performed at like Mount Vernon numerous times in our colonial outfits. And it was along the Potomac there. It was so interesting, and just being around that area with all the monuments and different things to see, and the Capitol and Smithsonian, and but it's still dearest thing to me is still Arlington Cemetery. It's just if anybody ever's had a chance to see that, by all means go, because you'd never regret it. And but I was only in 21 months, and we were supposed to be helping in Bobby Kennedy's funeral, because I was in when Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther were assassinated. There a short time between each other, and we were supposed to be helping. So we were all dressed up in our, they wanted us in our greens, and at that time to be helping in the cemetery. So we were standing by and ready to help if they needed us, but some were called and some weren't. But our Fife and Drum Corps wasn't called, but we still got a nice written thank you from Ethel Kennedy for willing to participate in Bobby's funeral. And I was there, after the Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther was assassinated. They had these riots down in D.C. and boy, up on the hills in Fort Myer there in Arlington, you could just see all of Washington downtown burning. And that's where our infantry units were, but they didn't have us go down there. They had us stay on base. Overall, all I can say is it was just a tremendous experience, and I'm glad I did. And going back to college, I got an early out 3 months. Otherwise, I was supposed to be in.
So where did you muster out of? Where did you muster out of? Right there in Virginia.
At Fort Myer.
At Fort Myer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you flew home.
Office,
Pardon?
Pardon me.
And you flew home from there?
Yes. Yeah. But what the commanding officer said when he said, if you decide to come in, he said, you're not going to go any place until you get out of the Army, because this is where you'll be. And it came true, because never had to go anyplace else and got to keep that musician MOS. It kind of bothered me to know that, I probably should have went to officers candidate school like I was supposed to, and be a second lieutenant, but that's the way things worked out. And it was because every day except Sundays, we would see these caissons go by, and the caisson, they'd go right by our barracks right in front. And there were 6 black horses, and also the carriage, which was an antique from the Civil War that carried the caskets, but they didn't have the caskets on at that time because they went to the chapel, and then the horses and the caissons would go to take the coffin from the church and out to the burial in Arlington Cemetery, which was entrance. It was like 100 feet away from the chapel there. And also it was interesting to see because you may have remembered when John Kennedy was born, they had this blackjack, and the caissons were about the horse, the big black horse. They were about 2 blocks from our barracks, so being I had horses on the farm, I'd go down and see them and everything. And Blackjack was there, and he was just a big, black, beautiful horse. Same with all the caisson horses. So it's a requirement. They're all black and they're almost all identical. But what they have is when an officer, a colonel or general or above, dies, what they do is they have it's a special honor for the ranks like that. They have the boots turned backwards in the saddle versus forward, and that means that rider who passed away will never ride again, and it's signifying their passing. But and then went back to Wahpeton, got early out, and got I met a person there before I went in the Army, and he helped me get an early out to come back to Wahpeton and finish up my 2-year degree there. And one day he ended up calling me in and asked me to come in and talk to a couple of guys from Champion Industries, and he said, you ought to speak with them, because he said, I've been a placement director here for 20-some years, and he said, at that time, he said, this is the best job that ever came through the campus that we know about. So he said, I'd like you to interview for it. And I did, and I got the job, and the rest is life, and kept on going. So, was there anything else that you would like me to cover?
Well, is there anything?
There's so much talking here, but
yeah, you've done a great job here, Ray. Is there anything you wish you'd have done different in the military? Sounds like you enjoyed what you were doing quite a bit.
I did. I really did, because it got me into places that I would have never been. To the White House and the Pentagon. Oh, that brings another. When General Westmoreland retired, we had a full honor ceremony for him at the Pentagon, and he and President Johnson walked, just reviewing the troops, walked right by us. And they had me in the front because they knew I was a great marcher, but I wasn't a very good Fife player, because some of these people grew up playing flutes and everything else, and they were really good. But I stumbled along, but I was a good marcher, so they wanted me right in front on the corners. And so that was kind of and then they would say, Yutrenka, don't play this song, just move your fingers.
So you came back to Argyle, you went to Wahpeton School, you got that job, and where did you go from there?
Well, I went to Bismarck, because they needed a territory rep for North Dakota and South Dakota. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I got promoted to Illinois, and Central Illinois, and I was there for 7 years, and then got married during that time, and my wife was an executive with Xerox, and she got a promotion out to Colorado, so moved out there. So I stayed with them for a few more years, and then I went into commercial real estate, mergers and acquisitions, and that's what I do now. So still working, enjoying it.
And where do you live now, Ray?
Pardon me?
Where do you live now? You're in Huntington, right?
Oh, we live in Huntington Beach, California.
Yep.
And was beautiful weather out here, sunny. Got a lot of rain last night, but this morning it was 39 degrees, so get a little cool temperatures too. So
get a little of what Minnesota is.
Yeah, right. That's for sure.
Well, Ray, I want to thank you for doing this interview. I know the people around Argyle are proud of you, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, and thank you for yours, Keith, because you have done a phenomenal job as our commander.
Thank you.
Legion.
Thank you, Ray.
Proud to say I know you.